Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and this evening I have a very disturbing message to share with you guys. Nothing but lies and deceit from Rome all the way to Israel in the building of the third temple, actually in fulfilling a biblical prophecy, at least what they're trying to fulfill. As we've stated before in other broadcasts, they are trying to fake a millennial reign. They're trying to fake many prophecies, and we've recently discovered in Daniel's prophecy exactly what the Vatican is up to, what their plans are. Something we want to share with you this evening is more interesting revelations that we are discovering that may very well implicate more than just Rome behind this sinister plan in bringing about Israel's third temple. Let's take a look at some of the things that we're speaking about today. As many of you may well know, back in 2014, when the Vatican was, the Pope Francis came during the Easter Passover, he came right to Israel. He came to the upper room, and what you're seeing on your screen now, this was Pope Francis bringing about the first communion service there in the upper room by the Vatican. A clear fulfillment of biblical prophecy. It was only men that were allowed to partake of this communion, according to what one of the sources from the Vatican's own news website stated here. And in fact, I don't even think I was able to see, but maybe, I don't even think we saw any women whatsoever in attendance during this time. But according to their own statement, it was only men that partook in this particular mass service. It was a fulfillment of prophecy from the book of Obadiah, a prophecy that most people never even thought possible. And if we go to Obadiah, we find that prophecy where he actually states in verse 16 exactly what would be taking place there. It says, "For as you have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been." The funny thing is, in the Hebraic language, we find that when it speaks about the drinking upon thy holy mountain, that it is in the masculine plural when it speaks as you have drunk upon my holy mountain, meaning there would only be men involved in this first communion service that Pope Francis was over. But the strange thing is, then it says, and they shall continually drink. That is actually in the plural, but it's gender inclusive, showing that the people of all nations would actually partake in that particular communion service, which continually happened after the Pope of Rome left Israel. And yes, they did. They did exactly that. They continued to do the masses in the upper room above King David's tomb, which you must understand is also a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, as we see here in Obadiah. Why? Because we see that even the Israeli government, back when Pope Benedict was a pope, gave them an official seat at the tomb of David, officially making the Pope of Rome a king of Israel. Very disheartening to say the very least in what we're seeing here and what's happening. But I want to share with you some more things here that we are discovering as well. This is only just part of the things that have taken place or that are taking place in Israel right now, of prophecies actually being fulfilled. And I think you should see some more things. In fact, something that we discovered just the other day that I want to share with you now is a prophecy from the book of Daniel that we spoke about just the other day on one of our news broadcasts here. In Daniel chapter 11, if you scroll down to verse 14, it says, "And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south, and the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall." Now, if you go over to the Hebraic language to look at this, which if you're able to see this on your screen here, we'll share that with you. It's very, very interesting, to say the least, in what happens. It doesn't look like I can actually pull that one up for you guys. But at any rate there, let's continue on there. When you look at that in the Hebraic language, I'll just have to tell you, I was hoping I could bring the Hebrew up, but we're actually traveling right now, so I'm not able to pull that up, but I can at least tell you what is written there in this passage here, where you see the word robbers. In other translations, they translate that as violent, the violent men, but literally in the Hebraic language, it is the lawless. The lawless ones were those that didn't keep the true word of God, the true laws, which were not the 613 over in Leviticus. God is speaking about what he commanded Moses in Deuteronomy, what Yeshua reminded the rich young ruler of. Thou knowest the commandments. And he said, I've observed these since my youth, Lord. But undoubtedly hadn't really observed them, because when he said, sell what you have and give to the poor, he was not willing to do that. But these are the commandments that Yeshua refers to, as most people look at it from the biblical passage of Moses, the 10 Commandments. All right, so it says here literally what we're seeing in that latter part of the verse there, and the sons, B'nai, see, B'nai, the sons of the lawless of your people, Amcha in Hebrew, is exactly what Daniel is told. And Daniel is the one the angel is speaking to, the sons of your people. You see, this is the ones that actually, it's the Jews, in other words, the sons of your people, the lawless of your people, will try to literally marry the vision. Now, you may wonder, why does the scripture say marry the vision? Well, it's quite obvious why they want to try to marry the vision. The reason why they're trying to marry the vision was the same reason that we see biblical prophecy fulfilling again in the day, or I should say a repeat of prophecy. If we go back to the times of Elijah, the king of Israel, Elijah, the prophet of Israel, during his time there was a king named Ahab. And Ahab married Jezebel, a Gentile woman who brought idolatry into Israel. This is where Jezebel's sin was. It wasn't the fact that she was a woman. It wasn't the fact that she was a foreigner, because there were many times that different kings married foreigners in Israel's biblical history, and there was nothing wrong with it. Some of the greatest women in Bible time was women from Gentile people, such as we read the story of Ruth. You know, we have all these great things. It was the fact that Jezebel brought idolatry into Israel, and it was only foreshadowing what Israel would do in her future as well. And this is what Daniel's prophecy in chapter 11 is speaking about, because you have to remember in Daniel chapter 11 it's also talking about that prince. Now, not the anointed prince, not the Mashiach that it's talking about, but it's talking about the prince that shall come, like in Daniel chapter 9. We read about the prince that shall come shall be of the will be of the people that destroy the temple and the sanctuary. Well, it was Titus, the Roman general, that destroyed the sanctuary, which the book of Obadiah also clearly identifies who destroyed the temple was the descendants of Esau. And he goes so clearly in the prophecy of Obadiah to say that you stood aloof as your brethren were destroyed and as the treasures were taken. Stood aloof. Why do I say that? Because we find in biblical prophecies today, what are the people actually saying? They say, well, even like Chuck Missler. We've been with Chuck before, precious brother there. But Chuck actually states that it wasn't Rome that was the main player in this. The warriors were actually Syrians. Well, of course it was Syrians. Even Obadiah said that you stood aloof in other words, you just stood off to the side while your brethren were just murdered. And of course, they had a great relationship with Syria. Esau did, because he was in Rome at that time. The Titus, the Roman general, he had a great relationship. Why? Hadad, who was the sole surviving heir of King David's sword according to the book of Kings, that survives. He's raised down in Egypt by the Pharaoh of Egypt, and when he becomes a grown man, he asks the king for leave to go be with his people. He doesn't go to Edom. He doesn't go to Edomiah. He ends up going to Syria, becomes the king of Syria. Yeah, he did have some good sons that preceded him later, but this is where, and we find, biblically speaking, then God attributes him through the prophet Obadiah as being in Rome later. So there's already an attachment. Even like today, Rome has a strong attachment with the Arabic people. The Arabic people of all the lands over there. It's one of the only reasons why the Catholic Church can survive in a lot of these Arabic lands, because they do have a close relationship. But as we continue on, though, it was Daniel's people that tried to marry this vision. And in modern days, we have seen that just as Ahab married Jezebel and brought idolatry into Israel, when Israel first became a nation, what did Shimon Peres do? He actually, just like his forefather Ahab, and it makes you wonder, is he really genetically related to Ahab? Because what does he do? He brings idolatry right back in Israel. In 1993, 1994, he made a covenant with Rome. You should take the time to read it. It's very interesting what it says in there. But he basically gave Jerusalem away to the Roman Vatican and promised to bring in a United Nations force, divide the city, give a state to the Palestinians, and Israel would have a separate state, and they would make the city an international city. That's documented facts that we're talking about. This is exactly what Daniel 11 is speaking about. The sons of the lawless of your people. See, Shimon Peres, he's just become a renegade. It's interesting also, too, Barry Chamish, an investigative journalist for Israel who wrote the book about who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, he reported himself that while reading Yitzhak Rabin's autobiography, he noticed that Yitzhak Rabin had noted that Shimon Peres had went to a Jesuit school back in Poland. He thought that was kind of interesting, and he said he made a mental note of it. In other words, he already had Jesuit ties to the Vatican. No wonder why they chose him to do this. This is something I'm hoping to go into a little bit deeper in the very near future, is the establishment of the state of Israel. Because we see that they're trying to fulfill biblical prophecy, but it's not the way God would fulfill it. Now, I'm not against the fact that Israel became a nation, because I know that God has used that to his own advantage to fulfill his own prophecy of Zechariah chapter 12, where it says that the house of Judah would return first, and that the house of Israel would not lift up against the house of Judah, and that they would look upon him whom they pierced, and they would mourn as a family that lost their only son. And clearly in Zechariah 12, we find out that all the families that are named there, it doesn't even name the tribal name, names a family name. Why? Because Israel today doesn't really know what tribe we belong to. So it names them by family names. We see Nathan, David, we see Shimei, who is a Benjamite. That's what I meant to say there. And we see the Levites, we see the Samaritans, the families that remained, which were the Samaritans. They had stayed in the land. But we see perfectly the house of Judah, which is Nathan and David. We see the Levites. The Levites were still there as part of the house of Judah. We see Benjamin, who was a Benjamite, also the house of Judah. All are coming back. We see the book in Kings as well, the story of David, fully repeating itself in modern times. It's just amazing, to say the very least. So God is definitely going to use what they're trying for evil to serve his own purpose. So yes, there are true Jews there today. And definitely so, because God is going to redeem that remnant of Israel that is there. But not everyone that is there is a true remnant of Israel. But as we see that creation of the state of Israel, we can see it starting at its fruit in Daniel chapter 11. Now, I want to share with you some more interesting things that are going on, because in light of this, in light of seeing that they are trying to bring the vision to pass, let's look at what vision they want to bring to pass. That's in Isaiah chapter 2. So first 3 verses here. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up into the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. You see, friends, this is what they're trying to bring to pass, a millennial prophecy. Even the Pope of Rome, this is exactly what he wants to do. He's wanting to make it a city for all nations. And he's trying to be the boss of it, the head of it all. In fact, Shimon Peres made a very provocative statement. He said, there's no other man that can bring peace to the Middle East except Pope Francis. Now, will there be another pope eventually down the road? Who knows? But regardless, it is the Rome itself, the Vatican itself, working with the Jews that are the crooked, the lawless of Israel, not the true Jews there that are really trying to seek the coming of the Messiah. He's working with that lawless group and trying to bring these prophecies to pass. Now, I would even go far as to say that some of the group that are there that are trying to bring these things to pass probably have no idea they're part of a political scheme. I believe that there's rabbis that are trying to work, even if it comes to Rome, they don't know the seriousness of what they're getting themselves into. That this is not the way God intended it. In fact, when you look at the Bible, when it speaks about in the New Testament, the temple that comes down out of heaven adorned as a bride for her groom. You know, we are that temple. We are the temple of God. That's what, you know, is it in type? Will there be a physical temple there? I can't really say the answer to that. But the thing is you are that temple. That is where God did not want a physical building, but a body that was made with hands. That is the temple that he's looking for. Now, in looking at this, there's all kinds of things. And friends, I'm just now getting into this to begin with. So there's many other prophecies that are very concerning to me that I want to share with you. And some of this is going to be a shock to you. And as I said, remember, as I say these things to you, I believe many people that are even involved in some of these things here may be very innocent, having no idea what's really going on. And especially amongst the Jews, because their eyes have not been open to know who truly Yeshua the Mashiach is, that he's Yeshua. So therefore, they don't realize the web they're getting tangled up in when they get involved with Rome and all the thugs over there in Rome. But Rome does know. And they know exactly what they're doing. Because why? Satan said he would sit in the temple of God and be worshipped as if he were God. Well, you got to have a temple in order for him to get that, don't you? All right, let's take here at look at the second book of Kings in chapter 12. I want to take you down here to verse 6 is where we'll begin at. Now, this is something that happened years ago, but I believe we're seeing prophetically, we're seeing it happen again. Watch what happens here. Now, Joash is actually the king of Israel at the time that this takes place here. And it says here in verse 6, but it was so that in the 3 and 20, wait a minute, let me back up to verse 4. And Joash said to the priests, all the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even the money of everyone that passeth the account, the money that every man is set at, and all the money that cometh into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priests take it to them, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, and wheresoever any breach shall be found. Okay, the king had a wonderful desire to try to repair the temple of the Lord back during his time. Just like today, there are many that want to reestablish the third temple. Mainly because our brothers in Israel don't recognize the fact that it's not a temple made with hands, but a body hast thou desired, that has made me. See, but that's okay. Would Yeshua come and walk into a temple that's built with physical hands? Sure he would. He did back in the days when he was here on the earth. There was a second temple. You know, the scripture was already laying there as prophecy, but he still came and he still taught. He still released the animals as well. All right, now, but in this one here, it's very reminiscent of what we're seeing today. I want you to notice what happens. It's very interesting what happens here. So they were to take and to get in all this money to bring it in to repair the breaches, etc., as what we see the prophets say here. In verse 6 it says, but it was so that in the 23 year of King Joshua, the priest, Joash, the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. The king Joash called for Jehoiada, the priest, and other priests, and said unto them, why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Now therefore receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. And the priest consented to receive no more money of the people, neither to repair the breaches of the house. Now watch what happens in verse 9. It's very sly what they do. But Jehoiada, the priest, took a chest, and he bored a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar on the right side, as one cometh into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. Now, it's not the money that they had. If you look at it in Hebrew, and there's many other translations that say it a little bit clearer there, they took all the people's money and put it into this box here. All right? But they've already been commanded by the king, don't do it. But they do it anyway. All right? So it says here, the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribes and the high priests came up, and they put it in bags and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord. They went and lied and deceived the king himself. Do you realize what I'm saying there? They lied and deceived the king, making him think that there was some great thing that was discovered in the house of the Lord, and that's where the money come from. But all the while, they had taken that box, they drilled a hole in it secretly and just allowed the money to be put in there. And they were still taking the money. Well, you know, the thing is I've always said that Rome will have a big part in the building of the third temple, because that's where the money will come from. Most of it will come from Rome. But do you think that a lot of the Orthodox rabbis would accept it from them? No, because many of the Orthodox rabbis really know that Rome is not Israel's friend. That's why they took it to Sanhedrin and they convicted the Pope of Rome. He was found guilty of crimes against Israel. But you have some rabbis that would work with Rome in a heartbeat. So this is why we've had something altogether different that has taken place in modern times. And like I said, some of the people that get involved in these things, I don't think that they maybe not even aware that they're being used. And we look here at Rabbi Yehuda Glick. I think Rabbi Glick is a very good man, of a good heart, and means well. But I also see, even in the words that he speaks about, he knows the prophecy of Isaiah that the people from all nations are to come and to pray there from Jerusalem. He knows this. And this is his desire. I believe that he is sincerely means well in what he believes and what he's trying to do. But the problem is that God is not interested in it being every idolatrous type of religion coming to pray. The whole thing is the word and the law of God is to go from Jerusalem. It's not to be that the Temple Mount just becomes a place of prayer for every idolatrous type of religion that can come there. So like I say, I believe that Rabbi Glick means well in what he's trying to do. He has spearheaded a major campaign. And this is one article here that's on Breaking Israel News. It says, Rabbi Yehuda Glick, the voice of the Temple Mount. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord, the temple will be established, and the highest of the mountains will be exalted above the hills, and the peoples will stream to it. That's from Micah chapter 4, verse 1. In this interview here, they're talking to the rabbi about his beliefs regarding all this. And he is, Rabbi Glick survived by Arabic terrorists, survived in October of 2014, an assassination attempt on his life where he was shot 4 times in the chest. He very much was grateful for the doctors that saved his life, including an Arabic doctor that worked to save his life. He does have a heart for all people, and I think that is commendable of Rabbi Yehuda Glick, to say the very least there. But let me read to you some of the things that are stated here in the article. This is where he's being questioned here, and this is Ben who's actually asking him the question. It says, when you were being treated after the shooting, you noted that you received excellent care from both Arab and Jewish medical staff. Do you believe that there can be such coexistence in Israel? And he answers, all nations are supposed to coexist and involved in dialogue. I can only hope towards a future when Arabs and Jews work together for the betterment of humankind. Ben asked him, in your opinion, should the situation on the Temple Mount, where no one but Muslims are permitted to pray, be handled specifically? We have seen the scary videos of Muslims, often women, verbally attacking and surrounding Jews who enter the Mount, and Jews getting arrested for even moving their lips on the Mount. How can this be stopped? Rabbi Glick answers, the Israeli Supreme Court has ruled no less than 19 times that Jews are permitted to pray on the Temple Mount. Unfortunately, the police use a loophole that if they feel that the activity will lead to violence, they can stop the activity. Prayer apparently is seen as a possible leading to the trouble on the Mount. He goes on to state there. Let me take you to one other point where he says here. He says, what do you feel? This is the question from Ben. What do you feel our Christian advocates should be concerning the Temple Mount? And this is Rabbi Glick's response. We need to unite to get the Temple Mount open to all people in all forms of prayer. Everyone needs to express a zero tolerance for violence and on the holiest place on earth. The more people visit the Mount, the more will strengthen its importance for all people. We need to push public opinion that the Temple Mount needs to be accessible to all. The Temple Mount, a heritage foundation, which is what he's over, uses its donations towards this goal. People should write letters to their government representatives and demand that Israel allow prayer on the Temple Mount from all religions. The Israeli government is very sensitive to the world opinion, and this will have an effect. Arabs will eventually learn to understand that we are united for the good. He states in closing, I hope that the Temple Mount will soon be open for prayer to Jews and Christians alike. As it says in Isaiah 2, verse 2 and 3, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains and will be raised above all the hills, and the nations will stream to it. For the law will go forth from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. The greatest praise God is to have people praying on Temple Mount today. Even a Christian cannot bring a Bible to the Temple Mount. All right, this is what I'm talking about, friends. It is the sons, according to Daniel, the sons of his people. They're going to try to bring the vision to pass. And many of them, no doubt, mean good in their heart. I do believe that. The Vatican, on the other hand, definitely wants to see this work out as well. And I think this is why the Vatican will be in on it. Now, something that came up a little while back, though, that was very troubling for me, and that was that Rabbi Glick got involved with a man named Friedman that had supposedly knew that there was a huge trove of gold in the desert of Eilat, on the mountains of Eilat. And he got Rabbi Yehuda Glick involved in this. The title of the article on Breaking Israel News was Billions of Dollars of Gold Discovered Under Eilat, Mountains to be Used to Rebuild the Third Jewish Temple. Now, there really has not been this billions of dollars of gold actually discovered. It's what they believe because they found traces of gold, and from some of the research that they're doing, they're claiming that it's actually there. Now, by the way, just before I go into this part here, Rabbi Glick also, he's been to Turkey, he's working with the Arabs, he's working with everybody of all the nations, and even the Turks received him very openly when he was in Istanbul. And they actually stated that it was a stain on Islam that he was even shot. He is trying to bring that unity, and they also were saying that they believe that all the people should be able to pray there as well. Of course, Turkey has a very strong relationship with the Vatican, in case you're not aware of that. But anyway, when we look here at this huge gold that was found, in the article here, now Rabbi Glick is really pushing to bring out this billions of dollars he believes to be sitting under the mountain of Eilat in southern Israel. And he's trying to raise money in order to get this gold extracted for the using of the building of the third temple. But what's really fascinating to me is something that he actually states about this gold that I wanted to share with you. He states at the end of the article here, he says, we expect to use the gold in the rebuilding of the third temple, whether we use the gold itself for creating vessels and decorations, or by selling the findings and using the money to buy materials and manpower needed to rebuild the temple. We look forward to that great day. Now, if you go and you actually look at 2 Kings, the one thing that they didn't have enough money to do was to build the vessels. They didn't quite raise enough money for that. But in this day, they're going to get it. Now, Rabbi Glick and his own group on his website there, they are actually raising money to do that. Now, I don't think that Rabbi Glick is the only one involved in this. And like I said, I believe that Rabbi Glick may very well be totally oblivious to what's going on here. But to me, we're seeing another passage of Daniel chapter 11 coming to pass. The lawless of your people are trying to marry the vision. They're trying to marry in Rome with Israel, to bring that idolatry in there, to make it a church of all, I said church of all nations. That's really what they're trying to make it into. They're not trying to make it into a Jewish third temple by no means, but they're going to build something there. And they're going to build it alongside of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Even a Arabic cleric there on the Temple Mount, he revealed that himself. He said they will never build it where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is. He said, but they're going to build it beside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He revealed the very fact that it's going to be done. And what are we seeing here, in this case here with Yehuda Glick? Even like raising the money to try to dig for this gold. And also the Temple Institute, also raising money. What are they doing? We're seeing a repeat of the prophecy of the box being set outside the temple. After the king has already said, don't do that. Because they never used the money for what it was intended for to start with. They used it for themselves. So he tells them not to do it. So they regathered the money again, and then they lie to him, and they say that they found the bags of money inside the temple. I have always believed, even before Rabbi Glick ever came up with this thing about the billions of gold, and it wasn't Rabbi Glick to start with, it was actually the man named Friedman that had been studying the breastplates of Aaron, that from his own research believed that this is where the gold was. But Rabbi Glick got involved in this nonetheless. All right, now the thing is I have always believed, even before this, that one day they would claim to find a huge trove of gold or money or something that they would claim that would be used for building of the third temple, and yet I knew that the Vatican would be the one that would give it. That's where the money would come from. But see, the Orthodox Jews, especially after convicting him by the Sanhedrin Council, will never accept it from him. So you had to have some rabbis that were involved. In this case here, there were scribes that were involved, and as well as the high priest at that time that were involved in secretly bringing this money in and then putting it in bags and then lying about it to the king and saying this was actually discovered inside the temple. Now we can build everything. And they did hand the money over, and yes, they did mend the breaches and everything in the temple, and the temple was repaired, with the exception of the building of the vessels and stuff that were needed. You're going to see history repeat itself very soon, friends. We're seeing biblical prophecy coming to pass. We see biblical, scriptures have often compound meanings, compound revelations. And this is what we're seeing today. They're using something that's not true. I doubt they'll ever find gold in the mountains of Elat. You may get a news article that states that they found a huge amount of gold there. But the gold will really come from the Vatican. It'll come from those associates that they were told not to gather the money anymore by the king. It'll come from that type of people. They will have brought that gold together. But yet, the world would just think that it was a supernatural thing, gold discovered in Elat, or maybe even found in a burial under the ground there in the old city. Maybe they say that we found a huge pile of gold here. You can count on one thing. It will be a plant, to say the very least. Even the temple treasures, the Vatican has those temple treasures. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't end up planting that somewhere for an archaeological dig to discover, to exonerate Rome as never having these vessels to begin with. A lot of things may happen in the very near future, friends. Very near future. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live with a prophetic broadcast. I trust it's a blessing.